a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on Ohm Times, where we're changing the world, wait for it, one ohm at a time. And as we've been referencing, and we're still working out the details, starting sometime in January of 2024, we are doing a facelift and an overhaul of this show. I do that every now and then. After 18 years, I've had enough facelifts to give Joan Rivers a run for her money. And our current facelift will involve Ashley Olstein being my regular co-host. I think you're my fifth co-host in 18 years. She's here already, chomping at the bit, helping us move things forward. So just, keep your eyes open, because one of these weeks you're gonna chime in, and it's not going to be the Dr. Kevin Show anymore, but you're going to have to keep tuning in to find out the new name, the new tagline, and all that jazz. And all that jazz is not the name. Ash, how are you, my dear?
I am good. How are you doing today?
Well, I was up doing my clients, walking around in 24-degree weather. I wish it was 42. In 24-degree weather. I chugged in 5 miles in 4 hours of clients before noon.
Good job.
And then I spent the afternoon as a popsicle stick trying to thaw. No. So, before we bring in tonight's guest, is there anything new and exciting going on in the wonderful world of Miss Ashley?
Let me think. Well, tomorrow night at 6:30 Eastern Time until 8:30, New Hampshire Metaphysical is hosting their every other month online psychic message circle. So I will be there, and I believe you will be as well. I know you will be. So you can find out more information at newhampshiremetaphysical.com, which is nhmetaphysical.com. So that's tomorrow, the 15th.
Do you have any monthly book clubs left for this year? Or have you clubbed out for the year? Because you do a monthly book club.
Yes, I do a monthly book club. We are clubbed out for the year. We did our last meeting last week, but our next meeting is being held on, wait for it, Tuesday, January 23rd, and we're diving a little deeper this time. We're going to do a Brené Brown Daring Greatly, but we're only going to do the first half so that we have time to really pick it apart and dive in and see how it can help us from day to day, and talk about the things we agree with and the things we don't agree with. So I'm looking forward to that. That's also found at NH Metaphysical, newhampshiremetaphysical.com. On the calendar, it's January 23rd, and we hold it online from 7 p.m. till 8:30ish.
Well, who knows? Because I know that we have an author on tonight, and we'll see if he's up to enough snuff that you do his book for one of your books, for one of your book clubs. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod, right?
Yep, stranger things have happened.
stranger things have happened. Who knows? You might even say, hey, we'll do your book for book club if you want to make a guest appearance and answer some questions about it. Hey, you never can tell. All he can do is say no. But he doesn't want to say no before the show's over, or we'll have to accidentally disconnect him.
Whoops.
So I finished my last set of events last night. I have no events, no professional events for the rest of the year, and I fly out the 31st to go to Cancun for a week and a second honeymoon. And I am looking forward to coming back in fit, energized shape. Not this low, pathetic energy like I have tonight, but really in shape and ready to tear up the new year.
Oh, a good vitamin D hit. Yes, for sure.
Is that what they're calling it these days? Vitamin D? Oh.
Well, from the sun. Oh, boy.
Okay.
But-um-bump.
But-um-bump. Speaking of but-um-bump, I'm going to bump it over to you to introduce tonight's guest and to get this ball rolling. If he hasn't hung up listening to the first 5 minutes of the show, he may be like, am I going to talk to my PR agent? I'm out of here. This is crazy, wacky shit.
Absolutely. Well, tonight we have Christopher Hadnagy. He is a global security expert and a master hacker. He is the founder and CEO of Social Engineer LLC, the creator of the popular Social Engineer podcast, which is a website and a newsletter. He designed Advanced Practical Social Engineering, which is the first hands-on social engineering training course and certification for law enforcement, military, and the private sector professionals. He's also the first adjunct professor of social engineering for the University of Arizona. He is the creator of the HumanHacking Conference, which is an annual conference focused on training people who hack themselves to achieve their goals. I hope we talk more about that tonight. A highly sought-after writer and speaker, he has spoken at events such as RSA and Black Hat and given numerous presentations for corporate, government, and military clients. He is the best-selling author of 4 books, one of which is called Human Hacking: When Friends Influence People and Leave Them Better Off for Having Met You. Drawing from his knowledge, he has created a book that empowers readers to enhance their self-awareness, sharpen their communication skills, and achieve personal and professional goals. So, hi. Nice to meet you, Christopher. Chris,
Thank you.
Christopher Hadnagy.
Chris,
what do you like to be
please.
called? Chris. All right.
Christopher is like when I'm in trouble.
Oh. Well, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to be here. And thank you for that great introduction.
So Christopher, tell me. No.
Now I'm in trouble. You see, now I sat up straight as soon as you said that.
Hey, we're pretty laid back in this show. We don't expect anyone to be straight. So tell me. So I want to wrap my head around something, and then I'll see what questions Ashley has. But your original expertise in hacking was more like technological. Am I correct?
You are, yes. I was something called an exploit writer and a network pen tester. So writing software code that would hack other pieces of software and hacking computers through other computers. That would be me.
Ooh. Oh, how much time? Did you get caught? Was there jail time?
No, and that's a great question. Actually, I should have led with that, because that usually is the what people think happens and how you get into this field. But I was always on the good side. So if you think about this, companies hire people like me to come and hack them, so we can tell them how we do it before the real bad guys do it. Think of like going to a doctor to get a physical. You get poked, prodded, X-rayed. Doctor comes and says, "Hey, I found a few problems," and then they fix them before they turn into something, life and death. That's all we do, but we do it for your computer network and your people.
Okay, so I am very interested in the bridge crossing because, I did all sorts of stuff in the business world before I started my own business, which is very people-centered, and I've been at it for 34 years now. But to tell people who know me now that I started in accounting, that I actually did something in computers when they took up the whole basement and the bottom of the bank floor, and stuff like that. And they go, and you're an inspirational catalyst and work with with people and businesses and do all of this stuff. Like, where did all of that come? And so I'm fascinated how you made the jump from hacking code to it now sounds like hacking people. Am I on the right trail, or did I miss?
You are on the right trail. Okay, so this is an interesting story, and I'm not sure how far back you want me to go, but
go back. However far back you feel like you need to go to give us context. I want you to. I always tell my guests, tell it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and someday I'll hit 6, but it ain't happening this year.
It starts around that time, right? Because when I was a kid, I found this weird knack that I had of getting into places and jobs and things that I had no right being. Like at 17, I was a vice landlord for a big apartment complex because I was doing delivery of papers, accounting papers. And I walk in the office and this guy is sitting there chain smoking and looking like he's about to jump off a bridge. And I just like, hey man, what's going on? You okay? And he started telling me his life story. His wife left him, took the daughter, went back to Wisconsin. And I'm like, why don't you go after her? If you still love her, go after her. He's like, I got to run this place. I'm like, I'll run it for you. An hour and a half later, I got a job as a vice landlord for an apartment complex, and I'm running this place for like a year. Guy says, I don't want to come back to Florida. You know, what are we going to do? I said, you want me to sell it? He's like, you know how to sell apartments? I said, no, but I can try. I sold the thing for a couple of $1 million, right? Sold myself out of a job. Not really great. Later on in life, I was driving down the road looking for a job. There's a restaurant says chef wanted. I walk in, I go, hey, I'm your next chef. Guy says, what credentials do you have? Where'd you go to school? I'm like, forget about all that. Let me cook you something. I cook something in this guy's kitchen for him. He hires me on the spot. I have no clue what I'm doing, right? I mean, I'm a good home cook, but that's about it. He says, okay, I need you to julienne these carrots. I don't even know what julienne means. So I say to him, listen, Tom, everybody I've ever worked for, julienne's a little different. So why don't you show me your method, and then I can do it right for you. And he's like, I really like you, young man. That's a great attitude. So he shows me. Now I know what julienne is. Every time he asked me to do something, I'd be like, hey, can you show me rough chop? Can you show me this? And then he would show me his method. I learned it. I was there for a couple of years. I became a chef under this guy's tutelage. Never went to school for it. Okay, jump forward now. I'm doing the hacking and the exploit writing and stuff like that. And I actually stink at it. Like, I'm really bad. But I worked for this company. I loved my job. So we would get these tests, these audits where we had to break into companies. And I would say to the boss, like, can I just call and ask for a password? And they were like, why would anyone give you a password? I'm like, I don't know, but can I try? Sure. So I try it. And I'd call up and say, hey, this is Paul from IT. We had a database problem. I need to reset your account. What's your password? And people would give me the password. I come back to the boss and say, hey, here's the password for the account. So like, what the heck? I started doing this every test. And they were like, this is crazy. Then the clients, and this is where the shift came, client says to me, great, you did it, but why did it work? And I said, I have no clue. Don't know why it worked. And this one client looks at me and he says, you know, if I went to an auto mechanic and I said, hey, I got a problem with my car and it's making this noise. And he listened to it and he said, yep, that's your alternator. And then I went, great, fix it. And he goes, I don't know how. Because I'd be really ticked at that auto mechanic. And I'm like, you got a good point. You got a really good point. So I said, okay, I guess I'm going to have to figure that out. So I started buying books and reading everything on influence, persuasion, rapport building, nonverbal communication, psychology, decision-making, the amygdala. I started reading everything I can get my hands on. And I built a framework. And the framework came out in 2009, or about 2008, 2009. I put it online. I thought it was just going to be a fun little side project. And then the world's most famous social engineer, Kevin Mitnick, he got arrested and went to prison for social engineering, Altel and the FBI. He got out of prison. He became a really good guy. He started doing it for a living. He wrote a bunch of books. His publisher calls me. She says, hey, do you want to write a book about that framework you just put out? And I'm like, I'm not an author. I'm just like a little hacker guy. And she's like, no, you got to write a book on this. No one's ever done this. I'm like, okay, I'll write a book. So I wrote my first book. Came out in 2010. And when that book came out, everybody was calling and asking about consulting. And that's when I left doing that other stuff and went over to the human side and realized I needed to keep teaching myself and learning and reading every day because there's so much stuff when it comes to science and psychology and understanding how people think and work. And that leads us to right now, sitting here with you. And 4 more books later.
So I'm going to have an odd question for you. which is, how'd you do in school? Like, what kind of
That's not an odd question. I was a very, very bad student. But here's the thing. I was a really bad student because I'm not a traditional learner. But then it would be these things like, I remember in my 10th year, I'm about to fail, right? I'm like, the teachers pull me in and they're like, man, if you don't get straight B's for the fourth quarter, you're not going to graduate. Like, you're going to get left back. So I got straight A's for the fourth quarter. And they were like, if you can do that, then why don't you do that all year? And I'm like, because I'm bored, right? And it's just, I didn't like it. So that was my school. I did what I needed to do to get out of school, but I was not a genius student. I was not one of those people that was like on the honor roll and excelling at everything.
Do you have any idea why I asked you that question?
I don't, but I'm going to take a guess that it has to do something with the chaotic mind or something like that.
I was thinking more along the terms of ADD and ADHD.
Oh, I don't know if I have that. That's a good question.
I would strongly suspect you're one of my kids. From everything. So,
Dad,
I don't.
I always wonder where my dad was. No. Dr.
Right
Kevin's my father.
No. Yeah, don't expect an inheritance.
Darn, that's what I was going for, man. I was like, Dad, I need some money.
You got 4 books out, and you're out here, and you're stomping around, and you're doing all this fabulous stuff, and you need money. Well, right there,
yeah.
This interview's over. Ashley, let's talk about the weather. So I actually have several books out on ADD and ADHD, and have had stuff out that have been working with it since the late 90s. And I look at ADD as part of the evolutionary process broadening the bandwidth of humanity, not a disease, disorder, or disability. And you are definitely a shade on my ADD, ADHD rainbow. And just everything, the way that you do it, it's like, it tells me that this is, and my books are all start out with the words managing the gift. Again, I don't see it as a disability, but it explains how you move through the world the way you did, which in some ways parallels some of my journey. I'm not going to get it. This interview is about you, not me, but I have some parallels with you, and I'm an ADD poster child. And I'm like, oh, one of my kids, welcome. So anyway, that's why I asked. I was like, yep, I know what's on the other side of this. So, Ashley, I'm going to stop talking long enough for you to ask questions or poke at this imposter's story. What do you need? Yeah, I can be that. I'll figure it out. Sure.
I never did anything dangerous. Like, I never went to be a surgeon or, like a pilot or anything like that. I didn't do anything like that. I wasn't Frank Eben. I didn't do anything that can hurt people. I was an international negotiator for stainless steel in India and China. I was an accounting software salesperson, a chef. I owned a window cleaning business for a little while. So I did a bunch of different things like that.
A butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. Yep,
yeah, that's
one
it.
of my kids.
That's it.
Go ahead.
Definitely.
Ashley.
I am, unlike Kevin, I am not an expert with ADD, ADHD, but I would agree with Kevin. I think just even what you said, you were a non-traditional learner, and you were able to figure out the back door into all of these things in a way, and you're super charismatic, it seems, that you can really just kind of talk your way into any of those things. So not surprising that you're onto the human hacking. I love it. I think that's so interesting and fascinating. And I guess I might be jumping ahead, but most people, I think, are pretty much the same. That, everyone's personality is a little bit different, but I think people's behavior can be pretty much predicted. Am I in agreement with your studying?
Yeah, so what I found is that when it comes to communication, right, I use a tool called DISC, a DISC profiling tool, and it puts people into 4 different quadrants of communication types. And what I found is that if you can predict the type of communicator that somebody is, then you often can predict how they will answer or react to certain types of questions or stimuli, right? Like, you have, like, I'm going to take a guess, like Dr. Kevin is a high I, very out there, energetic, in the spotlight, very happy, jovial, doesn't mind poking at himself. These are all kind of high I's. So, I's will react very well to high praise questions, to things that are high energy, to stories that are exciting. They'll react very well to those things. Where you seem more like maybe an S, like a supportive type, someone who like really loves the team, gets behind other people succeeding and things like that. And that is not someone who really enjoys the spotlight as much or wants stories to have a little more of a team benefit to it and things like that. So once you understand how people communicate, you can then alter your actions, your pretext, and your expectations, because you can then usually qualify how most likely they'll act when you present X, Y, and Z. So I know if I do this, if you're an I, you're probably going to act this way, and that can mean I can prophesy, if that's a bad word, but I can foretell how you're going to probably react to the scheme, and then that can put me in a good place.
Fascinating. And what are the other two categories? I don't think I'm an S, by the way.
Oh, no? Okay.
No,
you get it
but
wrong,
I see why you think that. No, I see why you think that in this circumstance, but I'm curious what the other two are. Sure.
So the other ones are D, which is very good, because you just said, like, oh, I don't think I am, and that's a very D characteristic, which is someone who's very direct, does not mind being direct. Direct people, which is what I am. So direct people oftentimes can be confused with, like, maybe being blunt or abrasive, but it's just that we're very direct in that. Direct people are task-oriented and very focused on the task. And then the last one is C, which are conscientious people. Those are those who really love lists. They love things being organized. They love things being color-coded, and so they love all that kind of stuff. And those people are often very task-focused also, and indirect. So the D's are direct and task-focused. The C's are task-focused and indirect. The I's are people-focused and direct, and the S's are people-focused and indirect.
Fascinating. Okay.
So, go ahead, Ash.
No, it's you. It's all you.
So, one of the things I referred to you being like one of my kids, right? And and being like I don't know if I said a shade on the rainbow, but I have this thing that's got 64 shades that it breaks ADHD out into. And one of the things when I was creating that and dealing kind of in a parallel way, like what you're doing, only I was specifically doing it for the ADD, ADHD, is that there are situational shifts in letters. Do you find that to be true? That somebody could be a D at work and might be, or an I at work, and they might be an S at home, and they might be K with their birth or C with their birth family. Do you find that situational affects your disc model?
100%. 100%. And not only that, but not for everybody. For some people, like in my profile, it's like what you see is what you get. I am who I am across the board, no matter where I'm at. But a lot of people have a much different profile for when they're at work than when they're with their loved ones and their family, when they don't have to be a certain type of person or personality, right? And you could probably think of someone like famous, like let's say like Jim Carrey. When you get like intimate looks into his life, he is so calm and solemn, even like almost a little sad, as opposed to what he is in the movies and what he is on interviews. And he just does not appear like that person when he's just sitting there privately.
Well, and, I think it's interesting, because I know that when I am doing a radio interview, when I'm speaking on a stage, when I'm teaching a class, if I'm at a networking event, I rise comfortably to that equation, and people have this impression that I am very extroverted. And I actually am on the borderline of an extrovert introvert. Every time I've taken the test, I'm only a few degrees on one side or the other. And people are like, what? You show no introvert. I'm like, you never see it. And
so that's like your radio personality.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm game for whatever's going on. I don't show up with this personality, at a funeral.
Depends on the funeral, right?
Well, if it's mine, I'll show up with it, but that's beside the point.
Let's hope not.
Are you kidding? I'm going to shoot a 5-hour video that's going to be playing over my casket. They're going to have to watch. No. We are almost to break time. So don't worry. None of you will be around to see it. I'm all living all of you. Anyway, there is the music. I was expecting that. We're going to get more into disc. We're going to get more into Chris. And we're going to find out more about human hacking when we get back here on the Dr. Kevin Show.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
If I could be you,
and you could be me, for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show, where I'm here with my co-host, Ashley Olsen, and I am here with our guest. Would you like to do a mini reintroduction, Miss Ash, of him? You can cut it down to like 2 sentences.
Yes, I would. Today we have Chris Hadnagy, who is a people hacker. He has compiled his knowledge over the years and has written 4 books, one of which we're hopefully going to talk about in a little bit, called HumanHacking: When Friends Influence People and Leave Them Better Off for Having Met You.
Nice to be here.
And where can they find your book, Chris?
Anywhere the books are sold. Yeah, they can, Amazon. I have them on Amazon. I have them anywhere the books are sold. The last one was published by HarperCollins, and the first were published by Wiley, so they're basically everywhere.
They get around. Sounds like you.
They get around. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
that's good.
Before we let Ashley drag you into more depth in the book, I do have one question I'd like to throw out to you. What is the difference between this hacking that you talk about, people hacking, human hacking, okay, and people manipulating.
That is
good
a
question.
great question. Yeah, that is a really nice one. So I'm going to say that both of them can fall into the same category, but it depends on your intent. So when we see malicious people use the very same skills that I use every day, their intent is to steal your money or your identity or to exploit you or extort you at some point. Their motive is always selfish, and it is to damage you for their benefit. People like me and myself, we do this for the benefit of helping companies to improve. So I won't use pretexts. I won't use acts that would ever make someone feel shame or guilt or anger. I ban myself and my employees from ever using things like sexual pretext or pretext that offer to fire someone if they don't comply, or flirtation, because those things don't offer a training instance, and they make people feel shame and they make them feel bad. Where the bad guys, they'll use any tactic. I mean, right now there's a horrible scam going around on our young people, where these groups of folks are coming into gaming sites. They're chatting anywhere from 11 to 18 years old up, and they're getting them to send nude pictures. And then once they do that, they're now extorting them, and they're having them steal money from their parents and wire money or use credit cards or send money through Zelle or something like that to these people who are extorting them, or they're going to release those pictures online. And it's just horrific. So like when you think of that, it's the same, sadly, I hate to make the comparison, the same exact skills that I use each and every day, but I would never do that. I would never do something so unethical and immoral. So it's just a matter of how you apply those skills that makes the difference into if it's malicious or if it's not.
See, and because I teach a healing course for people that want to learn to do what I do with people, and I teach a whole component on positive versus negative manipulation.
Yes.
And some of how you're describing it is that, are you trying to create a win-win-win situation? Is it in the best interest of that person? And you're just trying to get them to see it is in their best interest. So as you assess how they need to hear or what they need, like, how do I communicate with them? Things like that. So I find this, I actually have run across your DISC stuff before. When you said it, I was like, oh, I know that, but I couldn't find the file in the file folder. I'm old. And so I was like, I know I've seen DISC. I know I've been exposed to it. I know I've read about it. I don't think I've read the book, but I know I've come across it before. So, but anyways, but that's the question I wanted to ask. And so,
yeah, no, I love that. I love that thought because, like, I like in the same token, the book that we're going to talk about, that was about like applying these same skills I do every day for work, but applying them in everyday life. And people will ask that question. Well, then, if you're doing it to get things in your life, aren't you manipulating people? And I'm like, no, because you can, if you give people a way out, if you give them the freedom to make a choice to not comply with your wishes, then you're not manipulating them. It's the bad guys. You feel like you have no choice. Like, if you don't do this, I'm releasing these pictures, or if you don't do this, I'm getting you fired, or if you don't do this, I'm hacking your computer. They use methods that employ, if you don't do this, something bad happens to you. If you use these skills in life, even to get something for yourself, as long as the person has the choice to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now, then you're giving them that freedom and that dignity to be able to walk away without harm. And that makes you a non-manipulator.
Yeah. So again, I'm very much about manipulation in of itself is simply a word, and it's the adjective that we put, the adverb, sorry. My English teacher's rolling over in her grave. The adverb that we put in front of it that determines what is the color, the shade of the manipulation. And
yeah, I like that.
Is it positive or is it negative? And, sometimes, and we all manipulate. If you've ever had a kid and you're trying to get them to eat their vegetables, you manipulate them. Here's the airplane, open your mouth. There's the manipulation, right? We all do it. It's how we do it and why we do it and what our intention is. And intention is so important. So, Ashley, grill him on his book. Let's find out if our. Let's find out.
Well, one question I was thinking of before we get into the book, which is kind of a segue, would be by learning these skills and reading the book and digging into it, can you kind of see the manipulation coming, positive or negative? I'm mostly talking about a negative manipulation. Does it help, shore you up for being prepared for these kinds of, hacks, human hacks?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say the answer is yes. It's kind of like, I use an analogy like going to, let's say, a boxing gym or a martial arts gym, and you say to the trainer, like, hey, I really want to learn how to defend myself. And he shows you, and months later, you're at the heavy bag, you're hitting a heavy bag, and then someday you're out and somebody, goes to take something from you. You find your muscle memory kicks in, and you react without even thinking about it. Like, you didn't have to think, and all of a sudden, bam, you took an action. Like, whoa, how did that happen? That's practice, right? So it's the same with these skills, is that the more you know about it, and all of a sudden you see someone taking a tactic, and you're like, wait, I know what's happening here. Like, I understand what's happening. This guy's trying to manipulate me to giving my password or to give him a credit card. Like, I see that. And the more aware we are of those things, the easier it is for us to defend against them. And this is a two-edged sword, right? Because I say this, and then people go, well, that means I got to go tell my mom and my grandma all these things. And I'm like, well, there's a caveat to that, right? Like, you don't take your young children and sit them down and talk about sextortion. You have to do things that are age appropriate and also at skill appropriate, while still trying to employ this principle of keeping people informed so they can be armed and defend themselves properly.
Gotcha. Did you say sextortion?
I did.
That's a new phrase for me. Thank God. But
yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good. It's not even a phrase. A good word.
Sadly, it is the thing that I was describing before about how we're seeing these groups of people get young children to do this, and they started calling it the FBI started calling it sextortion because they're using these sexual images to extort children. But it's not just children. We see this happening to grown adults too. So it's a really, really malicious form of this type of hacking that can really damage people.
Understood. All right.
Well, one of the things that you said that I want to comment on, and then I'll let. She gave me the opportunity, so
I took a breath. It's fine.
You took a breath and you asked a question off script. You didn't ask about the book, so no.
True.
So. So I know one of the things, and I want to see you brush by something, and I know one of the things that I teach my students, the people I work with, is that the person with the highest emotional IQ has the responsibility for the communication in the situation. And you talked about the appropriate skill level, and skill level does not necessarily have anything to do with age or education. It's actually about what is your EQ, what is your IQ, what is your communication, what is your communication capability? Do you go through things like this in that book?
Yes, and I love that because it's exactly true. I mean, I have worked with people, I have some people that work with me now here at my company that have not done anything in the field of human decision-making psychology. I have a guy that works for me. He was a collections agent. I have a woman that works for me. She was a sign language interpreter. Another one that was a hotel accountant. Nothing to do with cybersecurity. They're amazing at this job, right? And the fact that what you just said is just so fascinating to me because it was just, what is today, Thursday? I think it was just Tuesday or Monday. I released an article on LinkedIn that was about, someone asked me a question on what is the number one skill that makes a great professional social engineer, so not a malicious, but a professional social engineer. And I said it was empathy. Because if you have empathy, I can understand that what I'm about to do may hurt this target. So I better use ethical means. I better use kindness. I better treat them with dignity because I want them to be able to learn and not feel humiliation and shame and all the negative emotions that can come from being hacked. So I've got to treat them properly. And an empathetic person makes a wonderful professional social engineer because they're always thinking about the other person and not about themselves and the win. So I love that you said that, because that is 100% true. Skill can be taught. You can teach communication profiling and questioning and rapport building. Those things can be taught. I've been teaching classes for the last 15 years doing that stuff. Empathy is really hard to teach. So if someone has that, they're going to be a much better professional at this.
Well, you're talking. If you were playing poker, you'd be against two full houses on this conversation. So,
yeah.
Right, Ashley?
Yeah. That's a double-edged sword as well, but I'll take it.
Yeah. So go ahead, Ashley. Grill him. Get him out.
Grill him. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about like body language. I know that it's referenced in your book, so body language and verbal cues. So share a little bit more about that, please.
Sure. So when I started realizing how important communication was going to be to my job, right? So when that book came out and people started asking me to consult, there was no industry around this at the time, right? So there was nobody else doing this as a professional and doing it solely as a job. So when I decided, I remember coming home saying to my wife, hey, I want to start a company that does just social engineering. She's like, okay, how many people do it and how much do they make? And I'm like, nobody on earth does it, so I can't answer question 2. And she said, okay, well, you're going to just quit the job then and start this thing that no one else does? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to try. So we did that, right? As I started doing this, I started to realize that understanding communication was going to be vital if I was going to be successful in this. And one of the things that quickly occurred to me was that what we say is such a little part of actually what we're actually saying, what we're trying to communicate. Our nonverbals have so much more to do with it. And I kind of learned this from reading a book from a man named Dr. Paul Ekman. The book's name was Emotions Revealed. It was a phenomenal book about his research into facial expressions and how facial expressions teach emotion and show emotion, and how our emotions are linked to the type of expression on our face. So I started to read that book, and then I picked up books by Joe Navarro and books by Amy Cuddy and books by all these people that just were experts in nonverbals, and it opened up a whole world for me. I was fascinated that there was so much research being done into how our bodies are conveying language. And then I had the amazing privilege of meeting Dr. Ekman and having him be one of my mentors in my life. And we co-wrote a book together that is one of my social engineering books about how malicious social engineers and scammers throughout history have used nonverbals to make the people feel like they're more trusting. But back to the original question you asked is, I can't express enough how important it is for 2 parts of nonverbals. One, that you understand what you're seeing, and that 2, you understand what you're giving, what you're sending. And I think the sending is even more important than what you're seeing, because one of the things I learned through the years in doing this is, and this statement is I hope if anyone gets into this, they remember this: just because you can see the what doesn't mean you know the why, right? So if you and I were together and I look across the room and I see you have anger on your face, does not mean I know why you're angry. And there's absolutely no nonverbal on the planet that can tell me the why. So to get to the why, I have to have the freedom and the ability to ask questions, to interact with you, to understand why that emotion was there, and that may not always be appropriate. So oftentimes when we're learning nonverbals, the mistakes we make is because I can read them. I must know why you're feeling that way, and that is just not the truth.
That's a pretty powerful statement. I think that can be applicable in a lot of situations, relationships and interactions. That's a good one. I like it.
And if you apply that in so many parts of life, it's amazing how well it works, right? And we've tried to, my wife and I have tried to apply it with our kids and raising our kids, and I'll say we're not always perfect at it, but sometimes things happen and you just don't know why it happened, but I can tell you what happened. And the communication always breaks down when we make the assumption. well, my daughter did that because she doesn't respect me and my rules. Right? Well, is that really the truth? That if I say that, then basically I'm making an accusation and I'm making an assumption that the only reason she did that was because she doesn't respect me. Whereas if I ask questions, I might find out that she had a bad day, or somebody at work said something mean to her, or a boy in school treated her bad or something, and that it wasn't about me even or my house rules. It was about her feeling bad. So it's the ability to kind of step away from your own ego and understand that a good form of questions and communication can stop so many miscommunications.
Oh, yeah. Questions are so much better than assumptions. Also, because we are a woo-woo wacko show here on Own Times, I also encourage people to lean into their intuitive. That the intuitive sometimes can give us clues of what's the good question to ask, or what's the dialogue that we can put down that may be opening up the question. Now, because of the example you used, and I've done a lot of multi-generational work with kids and parents, and even 3 generations in the same room sometimes, trying to sort out through stuff. I have to say, though, one of the questions is, well, if your child disrespects you, how respectful have you been to your child?
Yeah.
Because parents don't get, if your child sees you being disrespectful to each other, or you're disrespectful for them, they're always going to do what you have role modeled more than what you say.
I 100% agree. And, I really like, it's not really a curveball. I really like what you said about intuition, because when I talk about nonverbals, and I teach on this a lot, and I give speeches on this topic, and Ashley, I'll ask you this question. Have you ever been in a room with a group of people, and somebody you don't know, let's say usually a guy that you don't know, but he just gave you the creeps, and you don't know why? He didn't say anything to you. He didn't do anything to you. He didn't touch you, but he just gave you the creeps.
Oh, totally. I have 2 daughters, and I've taught them about the creep meter. I'm like, honor it, feel it, know it, honor it, and bring it with you wherever you go, because there are creeps around. But yes, I totally get that, and that's intuition.
And it is intuition,
I'm sure
and it's
body
actually
language.
Yes, and that is the point, because there's actually science behind that intuition, right? Is that our nonverbal systems, right? So our 5 senses are constantly going out into the world and seeking for feedback, right? So our eyes are obviously picking up way more than we perceive. Our other senses, smell, our feeling, we're picking up on things that we may not even perceive that we're picking up. And all of that enters into our brain, into the center called the amygdala. And the amygdala takes all those modalities and the stimuli from it, and it says, hey, there's danger here. And it starts to create psychological and physiological processes that say, hey, there's some danger here. Now, it doesn't need to tell you what the danger is, because that's not the amygdala's job. The amygdala's job is do you need fight or flight now? Do you need adrenaline to protect yourself? Do you need to crawl into a ball? Like, what do you need to do? That's its job. So it doesn't give you the explanation. It just starts to create that feeling that, okay, something is not right here. And oftentimes, and I love what you say to your daughters, to trust that and bring that with you. Oftentimes, parents don't do that with their kids. When kids are saying, I don't like that person. Well, it doesn't matter. Come there and give Uncle Joe a hug. Well, no, if your kid is saying they feel unsafe, okay, still be respectful, right? You got to be respectful, but if you feel unsafe, there's something inside of you, in your nonverbal systems, that is telling you, hey, this is not really a great situation for me. Respect that, honor that, because you don't know. You don't know what it is, and it could be something life or death later on. So definitely respect that.
Yeah, and, there's also being able to recognize, and I'm all about the intuitive. I've been a professional psychic since the 1970s. So I'm all about intuitive and trusting the psyche. The other thing we also always want to be aware of is sometimes somebody will look like somebody and they trigger us because of that. And on one hand, it may be ding, 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 be aware that this person has something like the other person. And that in that you will be more intellectually sharp. You will pay more attention. You will look for the things. And because the funny thing that will happen is once you figure out what you need to know about the person, you look at them and go, they don't look like that person at all. Have you ever had that happen?
Yeah, I've had that happen, and I had that happen to me. I had a woman that my wife was friends with, and I had not met her before, and I came in the house, and she got like visibly upset, angry, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? I had no clue what's happening. And it ended up, after this happened a few times, like where she would physically start shaking, and if I was around, I looked like an ex-boyfriend that she had that used to hit her. So I just looked enough like him that when she saw me, she had a visceral reaction. She was fine with me. She knew I wasn't that person. It's not like she wanted to hurt me. It's just that my face, my stature reminded her of him. And she just couldn't handle being near me or around me because it brought out this fear response that she had from this previous experience with a guy that looked just like me.
See, so in my world, if she was my client, I would be like, so this has showed up as a safe version of an unhealed trauma that we need to work at healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can differentiate between the abuser and people that just look like them. But as long as people that look like them trigger you, you haven't healed the wound.
Yeah, 100%. She was definitely unhealed.
Yeah. And, but that moves us back and forth of, we have a lot of information that comes from our conscious. We have a lot of information that comes from our subconscious. We have a lot of information that comes from our unconscious. And it's being able to sort the information into the right baskets before you take action.
Yeah.
So in our about 3.5 minutes left, tell us more about this book. We know we can find it anywhere. I mean, well, we've been on the radio show. I just walked down to the corner and boom, it was just sitting there under a street lamp.
It was there.
Like, I was amazed. I mean, he said you could find it anywhere, and it was there.
Anywhere. It's amazing. Like if you open up your drawer right now, there's one there. Like I guarantee you.
I just ordered my copy on Amazon.com.
Well, thank you.
So you're welcome.
So
I'm looking forward to reading it.
There's also, if you go to HumanHackingBook.com, once you get the book, I put a website up all about the book, and I put worksheets, things to help people go through. I had this amazing experience with the book because when I decided to write it, it was because I had all these wonderful experiences in using these skills in a very positive way to like change my life and change other people's lives. And I started a nonprofit 6 years ago that helps law enforcement track people who traffic children and create child abuse material. And I got to use these skills in doing that. And I had all these positive, wonderful experiences in my life. And I had this group of parents that reached out to me and told me that they bought my book for work, but then they started using it in their family, and they fixed this big problem they had with their daughter, and she was angry, and they used all the communication skills. And I'm like, I didn't intend that. That wasn't the reason I wrote it, but I'm amazed that that's how it was used. So I put all these worksheets up on how to use these skills in this book for better communications, maybe getting that raise you want, or talking to your kids about difficult topics, or talking to your spouse and you're not getting along. So there's all these different exercises and things that you can do for each chapter. So if you go to humanhackingbook.com, you can create a free account. All that stuff's up there for nothing. And you can, once you've got the book, it will make a lot more sense. And some of the charts and graphs that are in the book, I have them in printable form there. So if you like to write on things, you can print them out and write on it. But it's, I created it kind of as a workbook, and with the ode to Dale Carnegie, the Win Friends, Influence People. That book is pivotal. I mean, if you remember, that was written like what, in the 1930s, something like that, and it's still referenced and used today. That's kind of amazing to me.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
that's amazing to me. So I look at these skills as something that are timeless. They never end. As long as humans are going to be around, we're going to need to know this. So my hope in this book was to help people use these skills that bad guys have been using since the beginning of human history, but so we can use it to better our lives and make those around us better too.
So two questions, and we may not have time for them to both be answered because I know we're going to be hitting the ding, ding, ding. So the first one is, do you have a personal connection to the child trafficking?
A personal connection?
Yeah.
So in one of my jobs I had, it's going back 10 years, we were doing an audit for a company, and I found a guy inside a company who was flying to the Philippines. He was recording himself molesting children, and then he was trading and selling those recordings on the dark web. And I called the FBI. We set up a sting operation. That guy will be in prison for 150 years. And it was the first time in my life that I said, I have a skill that can do something that is not just hacking a company. Like, I can actually make a difference here in the world. And it opened my eyes, and I said, I want to do more of that. I want that in my life. I want to feel good about my work every day. So it took me a few years of volunteering at places and learning the ropes, and I started the Innocent Lives Foundation six and a half years ago, and that's what we do now. We help law enforcement stop the trafficking of children.
I could tell there was something that personally touched you around it. I could tell by the way you talked about it. Chris, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So
that went
nice.
really fast.
It does.
So nice
it does,
to meet you, Chris.
It was nice to meet you guys too. It was a really great interview. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Next week, we will be back to planetary influences. Well, Ashley tells us what's in the skies and Rob interprets. Right here on the Dr. Kevin Show.